Now, I want you to imagine this scene with me. Moses is in the middle of a really long season. Let's just own some of the stuff that Moses has been doing, okay? So he starts at 80, like he starts tired. And he gets all his courage up. He goes to Egypt and he tells the king of the whole world, essentially, hey, I need you to take this command from me and let all your free labor slaves go. He has the courage with God's help to go do that. And then that's not going to happen right away. So he's got to go back and forth from God to Moses with these 10 different plagues. Okay, so that's wearing you out. Plus he's got all this drama. These Israelites now are starting to hate him because they have had more work because of him. So he's got all this drama swirling together. Then finally, they get let out and they get set free, so to speak, and they're on their way to the promised land. And then they run into a dead end, which is the Red Sea. Now Moses is trying to remain calm and cool and collected. He's trying to, hey guys, I know what's going on. He doesn't really know what's going on. And God's like, yo, raise your staff. And then Moses does it and the Red Sea parts and they walk right through it. And you're thinking, man, it's going to be breezy from here on out. And it's breezy for a minute. But then as they get into this trek toward the promised land, yes, their Egyptian enemies are gone, but now there's these Amalekites that are attacking them, so they have to go to war right away. They've never been to war before, and now they've got to jump into war. Well, they get through this war, and it's pretty good, and God gives Moses the 10 Commandments. And it's a really big deal. He's excited about it. He's going to enjoy helping people honor God now that he's delivered them as a free gift. Now they get to honor him with obedience. But what do you know? Right away, they do the first one wrong and they build this golden calf. And Moses is so angry about it because they're worshiping this thing. They're saying this is their God, not the true, real God that just delivered them with all these signs and wonders. Moses is so mad. He rips the thing down himself. Can you imagine what it's like to pulverize metal? Okay, so he's doing this. He doesn't just like melt it down. He turns it into powder. He makes them eat it because he wants them to like get it out of their system. He says, that's what your false God is. He's so upset about this. And the Lord says, hey man, I'm really upset. I'm thinking about leaving now, okay? I'm so hurt by the fact that I shared my laws with you guys and delivered you and all this, and you don't want to seem to really honor me as the true God. And so Moses is like, no, Lord, don't. So he's pleading with God now. Don't send just your angel with us. God's still going to be faithful to his promise, but he's like, I ain't going. And he's like, no, God, make sure that you are the one who comes with us. After he's done all of this, God answers him. And listen to what he says. Chapter 33 of Exodus, verse 17. So he's just been pleading with God, please don't send just an angel with us. Please go yourself. And he says, the Lord said to Moses, I will also do this thing of which you have spoken, for you have found favor in my sight, and I have known you by name. He says, Moses, don't worry about it. I'm going to come with you. I forgive it, and I'm just going to come with you. And then Moses said, now see me, he's been going through all this stuff, man. Think about where he started. Think about how long it has been. I'd be like, while I've got you, how about a break? How about like, can we go? I know it's not a big deal yet, but Hawaii, I hear it's going to be a big deal. Can we just get a head start? Can we just take some time over there for a while, God? I've had it with all these people. I'm burnt out. I'm worn out, but that's not what he does. He says, God, how about this? Verse 18. Then Moses said, I pray you, show me your glory. He said, God, you want to know the antidote? You want to know what's going to ease my burden a little bit? It's not just R&R. It is you. I want to know you more. I need to know you better. That will give me the strength that I need. Well, chapter 34, verse 1, he answers them. Now the Lord said to Moses, okay, well cut out for yourself 2 stone tablets like the former ones, and I will write on these tablets the words that were on the former tablets, which you shattered. That's so important because God is always telling the truth. He's like, yeah, this is a mistake you made, Moses. You responded in anger. And by the way, that anger is going to get the better of you if you don't watch out, which it ultimately does later on. Verse 2, he says, so be ready by morning and come up in the morning to Mount Sinai and present yourself there to me on the top of the mountain. God is saying to Moses, I want you to come apart for an extended period of time so I can reveal myself to you in greater ways. Because I know it's not a perfect time. I know there's not, there's still shenanigans going down at the base of the mountain. These guys are still kind of leaderless, They've already had situations where Moses has spent all day trying to bring direction to them sitting at a booth before Jethro had to rearrange that situation. These people are in trouble all the time. So it's not a perfect time for Moses to just go off for 40 days with the Lord. But that is what the Lord calls him to do. Verse 5, the Lord descended in the cloud and stood there with him as he called upon the name of the Lord. Then the Lord passed by in front of him and proclaimed. So we have to understand what's happening here. God is revealing to Moses. Think revelation. God is revealing who he is and all of his awesomeness. He's helping Moses understand, here's how big I am, here's how magnificent I am, here's how beautiful I am, here's how powerful I am. And he proclaims before him, the Lord God, compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in loving kindness and truth, who keeps loving kindness for thousands, who forgives iniquity, transgression, and sin, yet he will by no means leave the guilty unpunished. He's in a lot of ways saying, Moses, this is what I need to remind you of. I've actually already revealed a lot of this to you, but I need to remind you, this is who I am. Part of the way that you restore is you, in a fresh way, understand who is this God that you're knowing. After God tells this to him, he reviews, there's a section in Exodus, he reviews the covenant, which means he reviews the promises that God has made to his people and what he expects of them. He reviews what happens when you sin and how that's not going to go good for them if they continue to make other gods, if they mix who God is with other ideas. He says, no, you got to keep who I am pure before your sight. He just mentioned the God is slow to anger, even though Moses, you're seemingly quick to anger. That's not my way. He's correcting Moses's character. And he gives him again these 10 commandments, and he tells him there's also celebrations that I need you to know about, because celebration is a part of my nature. Sabbath is a part of my nature. Moses, I'm reviewing all this stuff so that when you go down again, you have had a fresh encounter with me. You also have a fresh understanding of what it is I want you to do. Let's review the vision. Let's review what comes next as you come up on this mountain and review with me what you're supposed to do. And when he comes down, verse 29, we're going to skip down. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets of the covenant law in his hands, he was not aware that his face was radiant because he had spoken with the Lord. There was something physically in his countenance that was different, and people could tell that he had been with God in a fresh way, unlike before he went up. Because of the overload that so many of us experience, we need rest. And sometimes we need a little bit longer rest to truly recover. So I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, as some of you have heard, friends, I'm not doing well. I don't like it, but it is true. A few weeks back, I began to experience something I just never have experienced before. I've heard other pastors talk about it, but I've never experienced. And what it is, I would really describe it as a type of PTSD. I'm not trying to take that category from anybody, but as I've heard it described, that's how it feels for me. There is a panicked fight or flight response to even normal things. It is not rational. It's not that I'm thinking about something and then I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. It is much more, it's not a part of your thinking. It is just a visceral response to things. It's like read an email. And I could see how it's been a long time coming. In fact, I could see how the Lord has been trying to get me over the years to, hey man, you gotta take a sabbatical soon. You're overdue. And we've just run into it. Here's what I would describe it like to you. For those of you who know a little bit, anything about weightlifting, there comes a time, if you're lifting heavy, if you're going to bench press, you're pushing them out, man. You're going, and then you're like, oh, I think I can do one more. And then you go up and you don't have it. Now here's what you gotta know about that moment. You ain't putting it up. Once you reach failure, there's no getting that thing up. Someone is gonna have to come and help you get that thing up, but it doesn't matter how much you want to, there's nothing left in the tank. And I feel like I am trembling on the edge of that, and God is saying, hey man, you need to come up the mountain. You need to put this down so I can do what needs to be done under the hood so I can lead and teach effectively. So I shared this with the staff. I shared this with the elders right after it started to happen. And they were all in agreement. They said, Carter, you got to get out of here, man. We got this. go obey God. Go do the thing that you should have done a long time ago. And if you want, be a model to everybody about doing it, better late than never. But just go ahead and do it. And, as I began to study, I didn't know this, but apparently even many for-profit organizations are now making their employees do this. If you're on a certain tier and you've been there long enough, they will require you to take a 2 to 3 month sabbatical because they've learned the secret. This is organizations like the Container Store or Cheesecake Factory, even McDonald's. There's a certain tier they'll make do this after a while. But they do this because they really believe, just like Stephen Covey taught, people need and take longer breaks because the saw needs to be sharpened. Let me read you this quote from David White from his book Consolations. It says, "Rested, we are ready for the world, but not held hostage by it. Rested, we care again for the right things and the right people in the right way. In rest, we reestablish the goals that make us more generous, more courageous, more of an invitation, someone we want to remember and someone others would want to remember too." So even though this is a little bit vulnerable for me, can I just share how I want you to receive this? So I know that many of you love me enough that I don't need to defend this decision to you. You're like, dude, do it. Even so, what I do want to do, and I think there might be profit in it, is I want to pull back the curtain and help you see what led to this and what I've been experiencing a little bit. And I want to invite you to be part of this healing with me. I'm going to invite you at the end to really kind of go on this journey with me from a certain point of view, because I don't want it to be this thing where Carter cuts and runs. I want you to feel like we're all in this together as a family because I believe that we are. Okay, now here's the thing. I hesitate to do this because it's a little bit beyond my comfortability level, but I think it's going to be helpful to you. So I want to go through 4 reasons pastors uniquely need a longer season of rest and drawing near to the Lord. And again, this is a little bit weird for me, but I've just made the decision that if it'll instruct you, it's worth sounding a little weird for a minute. Here's the thing you got to know about pastors. Pastors want to be godly, of course, but they're also aware that they should, model godliness. So that means even if they don't feel particularly godly, they should act godly, not in a fake way, but just in a demonstrating way. They should, resist their sinful nature. Well, one of those areas is nobody likes to talk about, oh, here's what's hard for me, and here's what's, the difficulty, and if you only knew and you understood the sacrifice. Of course, every pastor would feel weird about that thing. And at the same time, there's instruction to be had from it. So my kids, all right, there's certain things we need to teach them, even if my wife and I feel a little bit like we're being immodest when we do it. There's just things they're supposed to know by the time they leave the house. All right, one of those areas that we value would be, we want our kids to know and understand generosity is a really important thing. We believe your life child is going to be more blessed if you learn to be generous right away than if you take 20 years and then feel like you have to catch up. Well, for us to do that, we have to talk about it. We don't want to just tell our kids, hey, you know how much we gave? No, but we do want to demonstrate to them this is real and this is a thing that you should do. So in that spirit, even though it feels a little bit immodest to me, I need to bring you through this because this is true. And here it is. It's true for every pastor you know. It's true for every pastor you've had and every pastor you will have. Or maybe you don't even go to Fierce, you just found this online somewhere. And I need you to know this is true about your pastor right now. Yes, there are a handful of people, it's really public, and they make big mistakes and they mess it up. But that messes with how we're thinking about pastors. Because here's the deal, man. There are millions of pastors that are killing it. And you need to know about that. And I need to share with you these 4 areas of why through pastoral ministry, it's just unique. And here's why pastors then need to draw near to the Lord. And it comes with an acronym, which is REST. Of course, that's a little cheesy, but let's start with the letter R. And that is routine. I love my job. You got to know that. My job is dope. I get to know and love Jesus and communicate for God for a living. I get to take bold steps of faith for God. I get to know and see the treasures inside of people's hearts for God. That is awesome, man. And yet there is a long-term impact of the routine of week in and week out, year after year, having to prepare good spiritual food for people, having to rethink how we're feeding people, having to, while I'm trying to do that, go pursue some because maybe they're drifting or they're brand new and try to befriend them and get them to understand Jesus' love for them and explain the gospel to them. And then there has to be follow-up about that. And then from a church perspective, there's just leadership stuff. Okay, so not only do you have to be able to study well so you can communicate to others, you've got to be able to figure out where this thing is supposed to go, how the machinery works, how the organization works together. You got to help train all the different people to do the things they're supposed to do, and then you got to come back and check on them to make sure that's all going well. And you got to do that every day for the rest of your young to middle adult life. And that is beautiful, but baby, it is just taxing after you do it again and again. So I feel like I know a little bit what Moses might feel like when he's like, God, I could go back down there and deal with that, those stubborn people again, or I could stay up here and you could show me your glory, because if you did, I would have a little bit more beaming brightness to be able to go back down and talk to these folks. I just want you to consider, just personally, I'm being vulnerable with you. I'm wanting you to understand how this has been for me. In 2007 is when I started. That's when we put together this young adult group, and then after a few years, we launched that group into a church. Now, I wasn't paid at first. This is all my job, like I had a normal job, plus I'm doing all this as just like a side thing that I'm doing. Okay, even the first 3 years of the church, it was just bivocational, meaning you're doing all this other stuff just to support the life that can do this church stuff. And again, I'm not trying to blast my own trumpet. I'm trying to just tell you how it is, okay? So we're doing that. You know how hard it is to start a church? Like, you know how hard it is to push that? You know how many conversations and meetings and stuff you have to have with people and convince them that this is a good idea? And then you have to see people coming to Christ. Then you got to disciple those people, and you got to keep pushing the whole thing along. And you're doing it portable. So you got to convince people to get up at 5 a.m. and drive a trailer somewhere and hammer all this stuff together every week. Yeah, well, of course, my reward is, and many of theirs is from Jesus for that, but I'm just trying to help you understand the long-term routine. Well, then about 6 years in, which is when I should have taken a sabbatical, the authorities in this area, they'll tell you, yeah, every about 5 to 7 years, pastors are going to be healthy. They're going to take 2 to 3, maybe some even like a year off, depending how long they've been in ministry. They're going to do that so that they can reconnect with God and remember the vision, and God can heal all the stuff that's been broken while they were doing all this. Right about then, it was when we decided to be, we merged 2 churches and we became one family. All right. And then a little time goes by and that thing, gets good and it's sweet and it's working. And then, man, maybe it's time to take a good sabbatical. And then COVID. All right. So now you're dealing with that. And there's always, and I'm thinking about this every year. Well, I should probably take a sabbatical. Well, I probably should, but there's always a reason not to. And eventually you get to the point where, like I am, you're having a little bit of PTSD and the Lord is spanking you a little bit. He's like, dude, I'm telling you, man, you can't put this off forever. The weight of that routine, don't feel sorry for me. I'm just telling you, think that through for me, okay? I've been going, I don't know when you started, but I've been going since 2007. And that just feels like a really long time. That's why your pastor needs to climb the mountain, because I know we could do this. I know that if I can just get that time refreshed, recalibrated in the presence of God, man, who knows what we could do, but who knows what I'm missing right now? Who knows what elasticity in my heart I don't have? Who knows what opportunities we might be able to take that I do not have the mental margin to see because I haven't been recalibrated in a long, long time. Okay, so number 2 is expectations. This is the hardest one. This and number 4 are the hardest. And remember, maybe you don't even go to Fierce, but you should know this about every pastor you've ever had or likely will ever have. And it is that there's a different level of expectations that are on pastors than on anything else that I can think of possibly. I think the only ones that are possibly even near this are people like in customer service, because they're dealing with people's expectations all the time. But even there, number 1, they're being paid to do that. They're paid to cater to people's expectations. Pastors aren't really paid to cater to everyone's expectations. They're paid to teach people the Word of God. Plus, customer service people don't usually care for or love the people that they're trying to, please in some way, the way that pastors often do their people. So let me give you an example. You can be brand new. You can have never tithed a penny. You don't serve, and yet your opinion suddenly in your mind becomes very, very important and weighty and should affect what the pastor does. Hey, can you see how if you've got a really opinionated person, after a while, even if they're a little opinionated, but there's several of them, that level, that weight of expectation can be almost unbearable. Now, I wouldn't want you to think this about you and your relationship with me, okay? I know that so many of you love your pastor. You wouldn't want to even tell me stuff like this. You're like, oh, I didn't want to bug you. I didn't want to, get a hold of you because I was afraid that I would add weight to you. You don't need to worry about that because I'm busy anyway. But I just want you to understand what the level of this many expectations, how that affects a pastor's soul. So just think about this. Even if you've got someone that approaches and they're like, hey, pastor, I love you. I love the church. And rightly, they care about the church because it's their church. Of course they have thoughts. Of course they have kinds of expectations that they would have. But they approach, hey, I love you. And I don't want to give you any pressure, but I just have this one little thing that I want to show you. And of course, there should be a freedom to that. But just think this through now. Multiply that times 50, okay? Now, how many expectations do you have? Now, understand too, many of those expectations contradict one another. This person completely disagrees with this person. And check it out, the pastor loves them both, all right? And both of them disagree with what the pastor thinks and what the leadership feels like is the direction that they should go. Here's a great example, okay? Just think about masks for a second, okay? There's a percentage of you that thinks one way about masks, and there's others of you that love Jesus just as much, and you think an entirely different way about masks. And then there's the way we've chosen to, work with that within the realm of Fierce Church, and it may be that both of you don't like that because it's too soft for some and too hard for some others. Well, check it out. That one issue, that's only one. And yet you've got people that are really and it's religious fervor. It's not even just like, that's an interesting thing that we need, we just happen to disagree about. It's like, no, the gospel depends on this. People go to hell because of this. And if you don't do it the way we think you should do it, well, then you are soft and weak on Jesus, or you hate people and don't want them to be healthy. Okay, so do you see that one example, how people that are even well-meaning, the amount of expectation. I'm just talking about the amount. I'm just talking about the number of expectations that can be on a pastor. My friends, it can just be overwhelming. Think about, even just the people want the pastor to be able to come over to their house and intimately speak into the deep places of their walk with God. And you got to believe this, dude. I want to come over to everybody's house. That's just not humanly possible. I would love to do it. Oh man, if I could create a little portal into no time zone and I could just be with people endlessly and teach them how to have a time with God and, let's talk about their sanctification. Dude, I would love to do it. It's just not a thing that can be done. Even in a small church, it's not a thing that can be done, much less ours. Can I just give you this to understand? Remember, I'm trying to help you understand. Nobody is more disappointed in your pastor than your pastor. And I don't mean that in a self-pity way. I'm just saying, dude, I know ways that I still break the heart of God. I know places that I'm like, Jesus, are we serious? We're still dealing with this? I can't believe this old fool right here. I thought you'd be further than this by now. I thought you'd think more saved than that. I thought you'd know a greater portion of, I thought you would have memorized Proverbs by now. There's so many things I thought you would have done by now, Carter. Why aren't you better? And in some ways that's unfair, but I'm just telling you, you don't have heavier expectations for me than I do. I've already got my own. So let's just understand that amount takes its toll over time. And that's why pastors need to go up the mountain. All right, so remember, we're talking about rest. We had R, we had E, and now we're on S, and this is study. This one's a little bit shorter, but part of the job description of a pastor is to be studying so that they can learn more and more of the riches of God's Word to help people grow up in all things into Jesus Christ. I'm at my best when I've got lengthy time to study and plumb the depths of the things that you're supposed to know, I'm supposed to know, our church is supposed to grow in knowing. God wants mature disciples, and for that to really happen, my understanding of God and His ways has to be growing. I'm sure that if, you can't be in the church very long before you have like at least a mini or a macro, some level of, you've got a lot of books that you've decided to read. Well, baby, I've got all those and more that I want to read that I can't even read because people have handed them to me, or it's some topic that I feel like it's on God's heart for the future, but I need time to just read that while I'm not trying to produce other things. Okay, so an example. Probably in your neighborhood, I'll bet you, or your apartment area, you're used to driving and you know the way. You could describe, even without thinking about it very hard, you say, well, I know there's a little creek over there, and I know that there's some trees over here, and there, maybe you even know the kind of tree it is. And you could tell me some things about that environment because you're used to being around it, but you go fast through it. You're going 20 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour through that thing. I also know that if you took an afternoon and you just walked those same pathways, you just walked on the sidewalk, you got into the flora a little bit, you even checked out how are these flowers over here different from these flowers over here. After only an hour, I bet you'd know 100% more or more than you knew when you were driving past at 30 miles an hour. Well, it's the same way with study, okay? I know just after 24 years of studying the Bible, I know a lot about it, yeah, but I don't know what I could know. It is so rich, and you deserve a pastor that is bringing you out treasures from the storehouses of God and saying, see what I found in here. Let's all share this together. I can only give you that stuff if I go up the mountain for a little while. So that's number 3, study. Here's number 4, and this is one of the harder ones as well. Rest, R-E-S-T, T is for trauma. There's a certain amount of trauma that comes with being a pastor, and I gotta tell you again, it's just different. It's different from any other profession I could even think about. There is trauma that pastors are experiencing just from being around all these people who they love who are also experiencing trauma. So think about this. Let's not even talk about trauma you've experienced. Just let's think about the trauma of the ones you love and the trauma they've experienced. So think that through. When you're really with somebody, they're really going through, you can't help but be affected. When they're really going through anxiety, or they've been really hurt, or maybe they're in the hospital or whatever, or their marriage is blowing up, if you love them, there is part of you that is oh, I'm grieving with them. That's a hard thing for them to be going through it. I'm not saying pastors are going through all these different traumas, but I am saying pastors are deeply embedded in the lives of people they love very much who are all going through lots of different kinds of traumas. And one, profession or realm that is maybe experiencing something close is probably, first responders, ER nurses, people that, yes, you are with people that are having literal physical trauma. I totally get that. Here's the difference. Even there's a sense of distance because those people are going to be in and then they're going to be out. You don't love those people in the same way. You haven't walked with them, all right? You're in with them, yes, and it's hard. Not even that it's not meaningful, but it's not the same thing as walking with people and experiencing some of the depth of their traumas, and then you multiply that out by scores of others, and then you multiply that times years, and then not only do you have the ones that you really love and who are they appreciate you being with them, then you also have the trauma of opposition of people that you loved and led to the Lord and had to your house for dinner and really invested in, and then for some demonic reason, they think that you are the devil. All those traumas add up, and I don't think that I'm depressed, but I do think over the past 14 years, there is a denting that can happen in the heart of somebody that is supposed to be elastic, that God needs to pop back out again, just to heal some of the difficulty that comes with walking with people through these really hard things. Again, I'm not saying I'm going through them, but I am saying I'm going through with people that are all going through them, and it's a lot of people, and it's a lot of pain, and it'll get better. So right before COVID happened, I had this hiatal hernia around my belly button that needed to be repaired, and so I was a little bit older, so it was going to be a tougher recovery, and they punch holes in your stomach, man. And so after that surgery, some of you remember this, it was hard for me to get around. I was wounded. But after a little while, those things healed back up, and now it's fine and dandy. In the presence of God, my trauma, just like anyone else's, will heal. Like, praise God, dude. Though Jesus will come, and he'll come with his balm, and he'll work this stuff out and suck out some of the poison. But I still need to go up the mountain to see that happen. I got to remind you, the devil hates your pastor. He hates my family. He is trying to do everything he can to make me one of the statistics that you read about. He wants me to be one of those guys that gets so hopeless about how things are going and can't handle one more trauma that they just off themselves. I need to let you know that's not even a thing that's ever in my brain. That is not a temptation for me. But I can understand a little bit how the devil tries to bring people there. And so I just want to encourage you. Here's my promise to you. I ain't going to be a statistic. I'm not going to be one of those guys, because I'm going to continue to go up the mountain every so often and get healed from the Lord. And I'm going to bring you down good treasures. I'm going to bring you down healed stuff that doesn't have the poison of bitterness in it a little bit baked into it. I'm going to bring you good stuff. Your part of the deal is you're going to pray for me while I go up the mountain. Okay, now having said all that, can I encourage you, just want to challenge you about me, about every other pastor you've ever met. Don't pity pastors. You do not need to pity pastors. That is not going to be helpful to them. It's not going to be helpful to me. Here's what I hope this produces in you emotionally. I hope it produces empathy. Hope it produces a level of compassion because, you've thought through maybe some things that you hadn't totally thought through before, and it produces an affection that causes prayer to happen, to guard and protect in prayer your pastor from some of the hits of the enemy. But I don't want you to pity me. I don't want sympathy. I just want empathy. Sympathy sometimes goes the wrong way. Sympathy adds a layer of, that's too bad and it shouldn't be that way. No, actually, that's exactly how it should be. That's the way the Bible describes it. Pastors should lead the way in, yes, difficulty and suffering, trial. Man, if you were going to be a pastor in the first century church, guess what? There's a great chance you were going to be the first to die. So there's nothing wrong with it. It's totally appropriate. So I don't want you to, in any sense in your mind, think I'm some kind of a victim. I am greatly honored by the King that I get to suffer any of these things for him. I just need to go up the mountain, dude. That's all it is. So yes, hopefully there's empathy, but do not, feeling sorry for people is a weakness. It causes them to maybe reflect on themselves as, the poor little me. It's not poor little me. Just have some empathy and pray for me. That's all I need you to do. So that leads us to what happens next. Well, let me tell you first what I'm going to do. I'm going to rest, man. I'm going to, after church on Sunday, I'm going to go and I'm going to be with the Lord and my family and begin this process of withdrawing up the mountain. I'm going to be reading a lot of the books that I've talked about. I'm going to be finding some nature-y educational places for my family and I to go so that we can be off the grid and learning things about God and one another. And I'm just going to be refreshing, spending more time with God and getting away from all the stuff. If I do anything else, I just don't know what it is yet. It really doesn't matter to me what it is as much as long as I'm getting near to God and have plenty of time and space to hear his heart. But what's going to happen for you? So that means the first 2/3 of this summer, I'm not going to physically be here, but I'll actually still be doing some of the teaching via video. It's actually just going to be best of. Some of you have shared, hey, this was my favorite message ever. We're going to share some of that. And the truth is, you need to hear it again anyway. Come on, man. Even, Paul said or Peter said, I don't mind reminding you of the things that you've already heard because you still need to hear them. And we all still need to hear them. So it'll still be newish, even if it's not totally new to you. I want to ask you to do me a favor and show up. Do it. Tune in. Like, make this a priority. If you want to love me, then love our people. And one of the ways you love our people and take care of our people is you show up. You're around. Because here's the reality, whether it's online or in person, I'm not there. And I'm not there to, there would be people that I would be intentional with and loving. And I'm not going to be there to do that. So I need you to be more intentional with guests. I need you to be having one another's back. I need you to be like, hey man, we're still a family, and check it out, Jesus Christ is the senior pastor of this church. And that's one of my excitements for you. I'm really excited for you to see Carter's fine and all, but Jesus is the real leader of this church. And I want you to see Jesus' activity and movement in our church when I'm not around to be a part of any of it. So that's what's going to happen next. Here's what I want to invite you into. This is the journey part. I really want you to do this with me, man. I want my people to be I pray for you, so I'm asking you to pray for me now during this thing. Many of you know about the Echo Prayer app. It's a free app that you put on your phone, but here's what's going to happen. I'm going to have a Sabbatical feed just for me. So that means it's kind of like subscribing to my feed, and then anytime you pray for me, it's going to tell me that you prayed for me. So it's a little bit of one-way communication. It's from me, but even so, it is still you informing me that you were praying. Now, it's not going to tell me specifically that you prayed. It's just going to say another person prayed. But it doesn't matter. The point is the prayers happen. And I want to ask you to come with me so that you're up to date. Here's what I'm learning. Here's what I'm figuring out. I don't really know if I'll post any YouTube videos about kind of like the things I'm learning. I feel like if I have to do that, that won't be good. But if I get to do that from time to time when I want to, that probably might be in some ways therapeutic. So watch out for those YouTube videos as well, because they might come. But here's what I want to say to you at the end of the day. I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't want for this to happen. But here we are. I know it's not the perfect time for me to be running off up the mountain, but I need to go up the mountain. And I believe I'm going to behold the face of Jesus in a way that I haven't in a long time at least, or maybe ever. And I believe I'm going to come back down, just like Exodus 34:29, when Moses came down from Mount Sinai. He was not aware that his face was radiant because he had spoken with the Lord. Here's my prayer for you. It's from Numbers 6:24. It says, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine on you, and may he be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance on you and give you peace. I love you a ton. I'll see you real soon.